there, everyone. It's Jenn, the board game librarian, and I'm joined with my husband and best pal, Matt, the dice checker.
Hi, everyone.
And together we make the Literary Gamers. Ooh, I even have a theme-appropriate shirt, which is backwards. Darn books, I have things to do. We'd like to thank Plan B Games for sending us this copy of Equinox, this purple copy of Equinox. Designed by Reiner Knizia, 2 to 5 players, ages 8 and up, 40 to 60 minutes. It's got Chris Quillam's artwork, so if you're familiar with his work, We're
gonna get flagged. Someone's ball is just in the picture.
Wow. Okay, great. Pessy Poopy's back, folks. Most notoriously from Red Rising, so it's supper time again, so you can tell what time of day we normally record over here. Wow, yeah, he wants to be famous. Okay, so we have only played this at 2 players. And in theory, there is no difference between the green and the purple, correct?
I don't think so.
Versions, I think it's just a style thing. So, why don't you talk a little about how it plays, Matt?
This is one of the trickier games I've had to wrap my head around to explain. There are going to be 8 champions out, and you're going to spend 5 rounds betting on which champion is going to win the contest that you set up. They all have to have the highest strengths, but you're only going to get rid of 1 at the end of each round. So you're going to have a hand of cards. What you're going to do at the beginning is you're going to either place a bet on who's going to win. You can make a secret bet, but only on the first round. You can reveal your secret bet, or you can just choose not to bet. And then what you do is you can play a card. And we'll put a little asterisk with that because we're going to come back to that later. Afterwards, you can discard 3 cards of any creatures that have been knocked out of the competition, and then draw your hand back up to 8. And then at the end of your turn, you see if there is anyone you see if the row is full and if you eliminate anything. Going back to playing a card, when you play a card, you're going to see if anyone has control over it. That's people who've placed bets on the card. And whoever has the most points of control is the one who actually gets to activate the special ability of that card. So even though you played the card, you won't be able to activate that ability. But when that player plays the card, he'll have that ability activated. And at the end of the game, you only count up the bets of the people who are left standing, and it's going to be 3 of them left standing. And then whoever has the most points based on that is the winner of the game. All bets placed on eliminated units are basically just thrown out. And like I said, whoever has the most points is the winner of the game.
So as you'll notice from some pictures I'll throw in here, it is a grid system.
The big grid.
A very, very big grid system. So this is a table hog. As Matt said, it is 8 champions, so characters across, and then 5 rows down.
And they're tarot-sized cards.
They are large cards. And you can out-card someone. Let's say Matt put down a 4 fungi guy. That's not
the
his
mushroom
name.
guy.
Mushroom guy.
Yeah.
And I had done a secret bet that I wanted the fungus guy to win, so I put down his 7.
That's true. You can play cards on top of cards, and there are chameleon cards, but when the chameleon card is played, there's no ability.
Each of the champions has their own special ability, too, if you have control over them. So if after round 1, you had placed a bet and that champion was still in the running of sorts, you played another card, you'd be able, in the subsequent rounds, you'd be able to use that champion's special ability. Wow. Okay, I'm laughing at him because he's...
And that's just kind of a brief rules explanation. That's not the whole thing. There are certain nuances. There's tree cards we didn't mention. And yeah, there's just these little tiny things. I'm not going to go over each creature's special ability. But yeah, that's basically the game.
The cards range in numbers from 0 to 10, unless you are the bear, and it's 0.5 to 10.5.
Yeah.
And there are 11 cards of each champion. And there are lots of champions in here that you can have a different experience every time you play.
14?
14.
I might be wrong.
So there's a bunch of different combinations that you can play. And your hand is always 7 cards, correct? 8 cards.
8 cards.
And at the end of the round, if you have cards from a champion that has been knocked out, you can discard them up to 3 cards, correct?
Yeah, so if you have a hand full of creatures that have been eliminated, you can only choose 3 of those cards to discard out.
Otherwise, they're just clogging up your hand and they're useless.
So what'd you think?
I don't know.
So why are we filming this review?
Why are we filming this review? That is correct.
You don't know how you feel about Equinox.
I feel like that's a fair feeling. I feel like that's a fair feeling, Matt.
Okay.
How do you feel about this game?
I actually really like this game. It's one of the... It's a very well-written rule book, but it took me a while to wrap my head around it. Like, because a lot of the stuff that's explained right away isn't, like, you don't see the purpose until a little further down. For example, placing bets on creatures and then playing cards, and then you find out later how creatures get eliminated and what you're doing, and I'm like, oh, okay. So it was, even though it's a bit longer of a rule book for Plan B than it usually is, but by the end of the rule book, you're like, oh, okay, I see what that's doing there, and it's very interesting. I would say it's probably more interesting at higher player counts.
I'd probably agree. We kept saying this several times that we played that we didn't feel like the game really amped up until round 3.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to place your bets in the very early rounds. In that last round, there's almost no reason to place a bet because in that last round you get 0 points.
Also, too, the first few rounds are long because you've got still all the champions are in play, and especially that first round. And if you don't have cards of that champion coming up, you're going to be playing that round for a while. There is also another way to end the game, which is the deck runs out. That's it.
In a 2-player game, that didn't happen the times that we played. I can imagine with 5 players that being...
Probably. And it probably moves a lot faster with 5 players.
Yeah, probably. So I think this is going to be a trilogy.
I believe so,
games. The rulebook kind of indicated that, which is interesting. Artwork, I love the artwork on this.
Yeah.
A man of many words. So if you're... the purple cover I think is just so dynamic. It's purple. But the animals are super cute. There's adorable mice and owls. I'm not super big fan of the fungus guy, but I'm going to keep talking about that fungus guy. There's a stag and a tree too, I think, right? There was a tree.
Oh, there's tree cards.
There's tree cards.
Yeah.
I don't know. I in terms...
It's interesting and it's engaging. But at 2, it really doesn't shine.
I don't think it did.
That's okay. It's not for us.
Yeah, we went back and forth and we played it several times to kind of say, well, is this a keeper for us or not? And it's not. It's headed off to the library. I say all the time, it's getting a new life, a new home, which is amazing. Other folks who may love it and appreciate it. I don't know. There was just something to me that didn't...
There was never that spark for you.
Yeah, that I was like, oh, this is interesting, or oh, this is exciting. We have other grid games. You were saying about Okie Dokie, where you're building...
It's another game that takes up the whole table, and it comes in the tiniest box.
Another grid-style game. I don't know. Betting games are so tough at 2 players. Many of them are already come at 3 players. Yep. So, I don't know.
I think the game is very well designed. I think that the ideas in the game are really neat. But for us, it's just not for us because we mainly play 2-player. And I think that's okay to say. It's just not for us. But it's for someone, and I can already tell who those someones are.
Oh, yes.
So, I know that it'll succeed, no matter what we say.
Oh, a little game that could.
Yeah, well, yeah.
It's not a little game.
Reviewers shouldn't be the be-all and end-all of a game's success.
Keeping that in there.
Okay.
So Matt, what would
thumbs down, unsubscribe.
Matt, what do you think of Equinox for a rating?
I would probably give it a 7.75.
Really?
I think it's like I said, it's very well designed, but it's just not for us. That's what leaves it out of that 8 is because it doesn't really shine at 2.
Maybe give it a 7.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, you're
So the thing too
cheaper
is
with your
I am
ratings.
cheapskate. Knizia stuff with us is either hit or miss. Very hit or miss. Again, I just didn't think it was for us. So that's all we have to say, I think. Yes?
I think so.
Okay, alright. Snowball finally sat down, so we're gonna end before there's any cat tails in our faces. I'm Matt. I'm Matt, the dice chucker.
And I'm Jenn, the board game librarian. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And when you subscribe, make sure turn on your notifications so that we find out when all the videos come out. Okay, everybody?
Yes!
Call to action.
We said those things!
End video. Goodbye.